Men are walking away and women are finally panicking. 2026. The year is 2026. The shouting has stopped. The battlefield is empty. For a very long time, the modern dating market was entirely defined by an exhausting, relentless noise. It was a cacophony of arguments, protests, and men desperately trying to explain their intrinsic value within a game that was fundamentally rigged against them from the start. But the game changed. Men stopped playing. Look closely at the landscape of modern relationships. You will not see a loud rebellion or an organized angry strike against the establishment. What you are witnessing is a deeply profound, silent exodus. And to those who relied on that noise, this sudden silence is absolutely deafening. They stopped arguing. They stopped pursuing. For years, men were conditioned to believe that if they simply tried harder, endured more, and swallowed their pride, they would eventually be rewarded with loyalty and respect. They poured their finite energy into bottomless emotional pits, constantly adjusting to a set of moving goalposts that were designed to keep them running on a never-ending treadmill of validation. It was a trap. They saw it. So a quiet awakening took root in the minds of millions. A man woke up one morning, looked at the chessboard of his life, and performed a brutal, honest calculation of the cost versus the reward. He found the deficit. He walked away. When a man finally internalizes the stoic truth that his internal peace is infinitely more valuable than any external pursuit, the entire architecture of the social dynamic fractures. He no longer complains about the hyperinflated, unrealistic standards of modern dating. He no longer wastes his precious breath arguing in comment sections or trying to logically convince someone to see his worth. He reclaims his time. He guards his focus. You cannot control the delusional demands of the modern world. You cannot control the endless hunger for attention fueled by algorithms and artificial validation. But you retain absolute sovereign control over your own participation. You drop the rope. You step back. And now women are finally noticing the void. The subtle creeping panic you see today is not necessarily about losing one specific high-value man. It is the terrifying realization that the invisible safety net has vanished. The dependable, quiet men who used to wait patiently in the background, serving as eternal backup plans, have completely evaporated from the ecosystem. They are gone. They chose themselves. They are in the gym. They are building their empires. They are sitting in empty rooms, finding a profound, unshakable contentment in their own quiet company, instead of begging for scraps of affection. Attention is currency. The vault is closed. For decades, masculine attention was freely distributed, an abundant resource taken entirely for granted. But the supply has dried up. The men have realized that they do not need the chaos, the drama, or the constant anxiety. They chose the calm. The calm is terrifying. To understand the sudden panic, we must first examine the architecture of the illusion. For the past decade, technology engineered a psychological environment that completely distorted the reality of human connection. The modern woman was handed a glowing rectangle that served as an infinite slot machine of masculine validation, promising a never-ending buffet of idealized partners. She swipes left, she swipes right. Every notification was a microdose of dopamine, cementing the false belief that there is always someone better, wealthier, taller, and more exciting waiting just one screen away. When you are perpetually surrounded by a fabricated abundance, you lose the ability to accurately assess the true value of what is standing right in front of you. Value drops in abundance. The basics are ignored. The ordinary dependable men were systematically relegated to the background. They became the orbiting satellites, the platonic friends, the emotional tampons, and the safety nets carefully woven into the fabric of her life, existing solely to catch her when the exhilarating chases with unpredictable men inevitably crashed and burned. They were the insurance. They were taken for granted. There was an unspoken, deeply ingrained cultural assumption that these quiet builders would simply pause their lives and wait. The prevailing narrative suggested that after she had exhausted her adventurous youth exploring every chaotic corner of the dating market, the good man would still be sitting on the porch, endlessly grateful to finally be chosen. The assumption was fatal. The men kept moving. As we navigate through 2026, the devastating flaw in this strategy is being exposed under the harsh, unforgiving light of reality. The biological and psychological clocks do not pause for anyone, and the glittering carousel of endless options eventually begins to slow down. The women who spent their prime years chasing shadows are now turning around, ready to finally cash in that insurance policy, ready to settle into the comfortable stability they once openly mocked. She looks back. The room is empty. The panic setting in is not a sudden loud explosion, but rather a cold, creeping realization of a profound miscalculation. They are logging onto the apps and the matches are drastically different. They are attending social events and the steady men are no longer hovering at the edges of the room, eagerly waiting for a fleeting glance. Where did they go? They went inward. This is where the psychological unraveling truly begins. It is the jarring cognitive dissonance of realizing that the men they friend-zoned, overlooked and treated as invisible placeholders have completely restructured their own hierarchies of value. The illusion of infinite options only functions when the supply of willing participants is infinite, but the supply chain is fundamentally broken. The safety net burned, the freefall begins. We do not view this shift with malice or resentment, for the Stoic understands that human beings simply act according to their conditioning and the environments they inhabit. Society handed them a megaphone and a crown telling them they deserved the absolute pinnacle of human perfection without ever requiring them to cultivate the virtues necessary to keep it. They believed the lie. Now the bill is due. Let us delve deeper into the anatomy of this quiet terror. When a woman realizes the steady men are gone, she is forced to confront the reflection in the mirror without the distorted lens of digital validation. The superficial metrics that used to guarantee attention, the curated photos, the fleeting youth, the manufactured charm no longer hold the same purchasing power in a market where the buyers have simply left the building. The currency is devalued. The leverage is gone. For a man who has discovered the immense power of his own solitude, a woman must bring more than just her physical presence to the table. She must bring a peace that actively rivals the peace he has built alone. And the tragic reality for many modern women is that they were never taught how to build peace. They were only taught how to stimulate chaos and demand entertainment. Chaos is rejected. Peace is the standard. The panic, therefore, is not just about being alone on a Friday night. It is a profound existential crisis. It is the shattering of the ego. It is the horrifying discovery that the game they thought they were controlling is actually over. The lights are being turned off and the men they ignored have already walked out the door, never to return. The illusion dies. Reality remains. Let us dissect the mind of the man who walks away. What exactly is happening in the silent sanctuary of his mind? He stops the noise. He closes the door. For years, the modern man was trapped in a relentless cycle of proving his worth to people who were fundamentally incapable of recognizing it. He was told to be strong yet vulnerable, to be a provider yet an equal, to be an immovable rock yet entirely flexible to the erratic emotional weather of modern dating. The demands were impossible, the rewards were hollow. He did the math. The equation failed. In the quiet aftermath of 1,000 arguments and 100 ghosted messages, a profound psychological shift takes place. He sits down, strips away the societal conditioning, and conducts a brutal, honest cost-benefit analysis of his romantic endeavours. He looks at the immense volume of time, the staggering financial cost, and most importantly, the massive drain on his spiritual and emotional energy required simply to maintain a mediocre connection. The cost is high, the return is zero. This is where the ancient philosophy of Stoicism becomes the modern man's most potent shield. Stoicism teaches us to rigidly separate what we can control from what we cannot. A man cannot control the shifting goalposts of societal expectations, the fleeting nature of digital affection, or the unhealed trauma that a partner might bring into his life. He controls himself. He controls his focus. Instead of being a leaf blown around by her emotional wind, you have become the deeply rooted tree that remains unshaken. The modern man realizes that his deepest suffering did not come from being alone, but from the desperate, agonizing attempt to force a connection where none truly existed. He was bleeding out trying to water a dead plant. He drops the watering can and he walks away. There is a deeply transformative moment when a man stops viewing his solitude as a punishment and starts recognizing it as his ultimate fortress. In the absence of endless text notifications, manufactured arguments over trivial matters, and the underlying anxiety of performing for someone else's approval, he discovers an ocean of previously untapped energy. The mind clears, the vision sharpens. He realizes that the ultimate flex in the modern world is not driving a sports car or collecting a superficial roster of matches, but possessing a nervous system that is entirely regulated and calm. He steps off the battlefield. He leaves the heavy armor behind. This is the anatomy of his peace. He begins to redirect that massive reservoir of masculine energy back into himself. He builds his physical strength, sculpting his body not to attract a passing gaze, but to to forge an iron discipline that anchors his soul. He builds his financial independence, securing a robust foundation that no one can ever threaten or dismantle. He curates his circle, allowing only those who bring genuine value and unwavering loyalty into his inner sanctum. He builds his empire. He rules it alone. When a man reaches this echelon of self-mastery, his entire aura changes. He is no longer hungry, and therefore he can no longer be starved. The women who attempt to leverage their physical beauty or withhold affection as a manipulation tactic suddenly find themselves completely powerless. You cannot negotiate with a man who is genuinely willing to walk away from the table. He needs nothing. He fears nothing. The piece he has built becomes a tangible physical presence. It is a quiet confidence that radiates from his posture, his deliberate speech, and his unhurried movements. He looks at the chaotic dating market not with bitterness, but with the detached amusement of a spectator watching a game he no longer has any desire to play. The drama is a distant echo, completely irrelevant to the beautiful silent architecture of the life he has constructed. The noise fades. The silence heals. This is exactly why the panic on the other side is so profound. They are not just facing the absence of a man, they are facing the immovable wall of a man's supreme indifference. He has discovered that a cup of coffee in absolute silence on a Sunday morning is infinitely more luxurious than a 5-star dinner filled with tension, unspoken resentment, and endless psychological games. He drinks the coffee. He smiles quietly. The modern man has simply raised the price of admission to his life. If an external presence does not actively enhance the profound tranquility he has cultivated in his solitude, then that presence is entirely unnecessary. The default state is no longer a desperate search for a partner. The default state is a magnificent, unbreakable peace. He is whole. He is free. Now we must address the most critical distinction in this entire paradigm shift. Understanding this difference is the bridge between temporary relief and permanent power. You must listen closely. This is the core. Many men in their initial awakening attempt to use their sudden withdrawal as a tactic. They disappear, they stop texting, they cultivate a cold exterior, but they do so with a hidden, desperate hope. They are secretly watching the door, praying that their absence will finally make her realize his worth. They are using coolness as a weapon of manipulation, attempting to inflict pain to force a desired outcome. This is a mistake. This is fake stoicism. True power does not come from playing a deeper, more complex game. True power comes from flipping the board over entirely and leaving the room. The weaponization of silence is not about punishing her. It is about permanently protecting you. You cut the cord, you do not look back. If you walk away simply to see if she will chase you, you are still inherently bound to her reactions. You're still enslaved by the need for her validation, merely wearing a different, darker mask. Your peace is fragile, completely dependent on whether she notices your absence or ignores it. You are still a prisoner, just rattling the bars of your cage a little louder. Drop the act. Kill the hope. The genuine, terrifying silence of the modern man is born from absolute finality. When you finally decide to walk away, it must be an act of supreme self-preservation, a surgical amputation of a diseased limb. You're not waiting for an apology. You're not hoping for a sudden epiphany on her part. You have simply accepted the reality of the situation, integrated the hard lesson, and closed the chapter forever. The book is shut. The story ends. When you master the art of genuine detachment, your silence becomes an impenetrable fortress. You stop explaining your boundaries to people who are completely committed to misunderstanding them. You stop offering logical arguments to emotionally chaotic individuals. When disrespect occurs, when the manipulation attempts begin, you do not raise your voice. You do not write a long, emotionally charged paragraph. You give them nothing. You remove your presence. Your attention, your energy, and your physical presence are the most valuable commodities you possess. When you withdraw them completely without anger, without a dramatic exit, but with the cold, immovable finality of a glacier, the impact is devastating. But again, her devastation is not the goal. Your unshakable tranquility is the sole objective. You are the prize. Act like it. This is the practical application of building a life where a partner is a supplement, not a necessity. You must construct a daily existence so deeply fulfilling, so rich with purpose, discipline, and quiet joy, that the idea of compromising it for a mediocre relationship becomes physically repulsive. Build the foundation, pour the concrete, your career, your physical health, your intellectual pursuits, and your brotherhood. These are the immovable pillars of your temple. When your temple is strong, you do not need anyone to come in and hold up the roof. A woman entering your life should be like adding a beautiful stained glass window to an already magnificent structure. She brings light and colour, but if the window breaks, the temple remains standing solid and unyielding. The pillars hold, the temple stands. The women who are panicking in 2026 are not panicking because men are using silence as a trick. They are panicking because they have correctly identified that the silence is real. They are staring into the abyss of a man's total indifference, and they realize that all their conventional weapons, their looks, their shaming tactics, their emotional outbursts are completely useless against a man who simply does not care anymore. The weapons fail. The man is immune. He has weaponized his silence not against her, but against the chaos of the world. He has drawn a line in the sand and he defends his peace with the quiet, lethal efficiency of a seasoned warrior who knows exactly when to draw his sword and when to simply walk away from a meaningless battle. The battle is pointless. He goes home. The dust is finally settling. The landscape is entirely clear. Out of the ashes of this hyperinflated, digitally distorted dating market, a completely new architecture of human connection is steadily beginning to emerge. We are moving past the initial era of shock and panic, entering a phase of profound and absolutely necessary recalibration. The old rules died, a new era begins. The true value of steady grounded masculinity is no longer being treated as a given. It is being recognized as a rare, highly coveted commodity by those who actually possess the wisdom to see it. There is a distinct quiet awakening happening among a completely different tier of women. Real women are waking up. They see the truth. The women who have diligently cultivated their own internal peace, who bring genuine cooperation and tranquility to the table. Instead of endless entitled demands, are realizing that the silent men were always the actual prize. They're observing the frantic, chaotic desperation of the modern dating scene and choosing to step out of the circus entirely. They value the calm. They respect the boundaries. These high-value women deeply understand a fundamental psychological truth. They know that a man who possesses the immense strength to walk away from a toxic situation is the exact same man who possesses the strength to protect, build and sustain a healthy empire alongside her. A man who cannot say no to bad deals can never be trusted to secure a good future. Iron sharpens iron. Peace recognizes peace. The widespread panic we observe across the digital landscape is mostly confined to those who are still desperately clinging to the illusion of infinite options. They are the ones refusing to accept the harsh reality that the free ride of unearned masculine validation is permanently and irreversibly over. Let them panic, let them complain. As a man walking this path, you do not need to concern yourself with the angry noise of the crowd. Your only objective is to remain steadfast in your solitude, guarding your energy until a genuine equal counterpart walks into your sanctuary without tracking mud across your floors. If she brings a storm, she stays outside. Guard your gates. Keep your standards high. The new architecture of modern relationships requires absolute ruthless vetting. It demands a complete rejection of arbitrary societal timelines and the unshakable foundational belief that remaining single for the rest of your life is vastly superior to partnering with chronic life-draining stress. You are the architect. You draw the blueprint. If a connection does not flow with the natural unforced ease of a quiet river, you must let it go. If an interaction requires constant negotiation of your boundaries, emotional manipulation, or the sacrifice of your core, stoic principles, you simply stand by the bank and let the water pass you by. Do not force it. Let it flow gracefully. This is the ultimate quiet victory of the modern man in 2026. He has not turned his back on love, nor has he become a bitter cynic hiding from the world. Instead, he has simply and permanently destroyed his tolerance for disrespect, manipulation, and unnecessary emotional turbulence. He is fully ready, but he is endlessly patient. As the dating market continues to violently correct itself in the coming years, you will find that your disciplined silence has become the most attractive and powerful quality you possess. It acts as a flawless, natural filter that automatically repels the chaotic and magnetically attracts the serene. The filter works perfectly. The peace always remains. So as you stand in the quiet, undeniable strength of your own rebuilt life, looking out over the fading panic of a world that momentarily forgot how to value your presence, remember the profound shift that occurred. The greatest asset you ever deployed was never your words, your arguments, or your desperate pleas to be seen. It was your absence. It was your iron standard. The modern revolution did not happen with a loud, aggressive shout. It happened the precise moment millions of men quietly decided that their internal peace of mind was simply no longer a negotiable currency on the open market. You are not alone here. We are standing together. Take a quiet moment to reflect on your own journey through this rapidly changing landscape and think about the exact turning point when you finally decided to choose your own tranquility over the exhausting pursuit of modern validation. When did you drop the rope? Share your story below.